3 weeks had passed since the horizon went dark in the asteroid crater. 3 weeks of rationing food, recycling water, and living in near silence while the alien ship searched for them. Jake watched his crew grow thinner and more tired with each passing day. Karen moved through the ship checking on everyone's health. The lack of proper meals was taking its toll. Several crew members had developed headaches from the stress. Others couldn't sleep, jumping at every small sound. "We can't stay here forever," Lisa said during a quiet meeting in Jake's quarters. "Our supplies are running low. We have maybe 2 months of food left, 3 if we really stretch it, and the ship needs repairs we can't do while hiding." Danny nodded. "The question is, are those aliens still out there looking for us?" Pete had been monitoring the passive sensors, the ones that could listen without giving away their position. "The search ships left the area 4 days ago. I've been watching carefully. Nothing has come back." "That doesn't mean they gave up," Helen said. "They might be watching from a distance, waiting for us to move." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept well since the attack. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those alien ships firing on them without warning. "We need information. We need to understand who these beings are and why they attacked us. Helen, have you made any progress on their language?" Helen pulled out her datapad, showing recordings of the alien ship communications they had captured. "Some. Their language is complex, but I'm starting to recognize patterns. They keep using one word over and over. Based on context, I think it means either contamination or infection. I'm not sure which." "That's not encouraging," Danny said. "No," Helen agreed. "But there's more. I've been listening to other signals in this region of space. There are at least a dozen different species broadcasting out here. Some of the signals sound like news or entertainment. Others might be military. The aliens who attacked us, I've started calling them the Vakreen based on what they call themselves. They seem to be the dominant power in this area." Jake stood and walked to the small window. Outside, asteroids drifted silently in the darkness. "So we're in someone's territory and they don't want us here. The question is why? We're no threat to them." "Maybe they don't know that," Karen suggested. "Think about it from their perspective. A strange ship appears out of nowhere using technology they don't recognize. They might think we're scouts for an invasion. Or," Helen said slowly, "they might have another reason. I found something else in the communications. The Vakreen were talking about humans specifically. They have a word for us now, something that translates roughly as the immune ones." Everyone turned to look at her. "Immune to what?" Lisa asked. "I don't know yet. But they seemed very interested in that fact. Some of their communications suggested they wanted to capture us, not just destroy us, at least at first." Jake made a decision. "We need to move carefully. Pete, plot a course to the nearest system that isn't broadcasting Vakreen signals. Somewhere quiet where we might be able to gather resources and information without being noticed." "There's a system about 4 light days from here," Pete said, bringing up a star map. 3 planets, no obvious signs of advanced civilization. But there are some strange energy readings coming from the second planet." "Strange how?" Jake asked. "Like someone built something there and then abandoned it. Could be worth investigating." Over the next hour, they prepared the ship for movement. Lisa worked with her team to bring the engines back online slowly, trying not to create any sudden energy spikes that might be detected. Greg ran through his pre-flight checks 3 times, making sure everything would work when they needed it. When they were ready, Jake gave the order. The horizon lifted gently out of the crater and began moving through the asteroid field. Every crew member held their breath, waiting for alarms that would signal the return of the Vakreen. Nothing came. They cleared the asteroid field and accelerated toward the distant star system. For 4 days, they traveled in tense silence, always watching the sensors for any sign of pursuit. The system Pete had chosen was indeed quiet. 3 planets orbited a yellow star similar to Earth's sun. The second planet showed clear signs of artificial structures on the surface, but no active power signatures. "Taking us into orbit," Greg said. "Whatever was built here, it's been abandoned for a while." Helen studied the sensor readings. "I'm seeing what looks like cities, but they're partially buried. This place has been empty for decades at least, maybe centuries." "Any danger?" Danny asked. "None detected. No weapons, no ships, no life signs. It's a ghost world." Jake made a decision. "We're going down. We need supplies and we need answers. Maybe whoever built this place left behind something useful. Pete, you're with me. Danny, Helen, Karen, and Lisa. 6-person team. Greg, you have the ship. If anything goes wrong, you get out of here. Don't wait for us. Greg started to argue, but Jake cut him off. That's an order. These people need you to get them home if something happens to me. They took one of the Horizon's 2 shuttles down to the surface. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, rich with oxygen. The temperature was cool but comfortable. As they descended, they got a better look at the structures below. Entire cities spread across the landscape, their buildings made of materials that shimmered like metal and stone combined. But everywhere there were signs of abandonment. Broken windows, collapsed roofs, streets filled with debris. They landed in what looked like a central plaza. As they stepped out of the shuttle, their boots crunched on something that might have once been pavement. The air smelled dusty and old. Fan out, but stay inside of each other, Jake ordered. Look for anything that might tell us what happened here. Helen approached a building that looked important, perhaps a government structure or library. Inside, she found rows of computer terminals, all dead, but some had physical storage devices still attached. Jake, I found something, she called. He joined her and looked at the devices. Can we read these? Maybe. The technology is different from ours, but not completely alien. Give me some time. While Helen worked, the others explored. Danny found what looked like weapons, simple but effective. Karen discovered medical supplies, some of which might still be usable. Lisa examined their power systems, trying to understand how they worked. Pete found something more disturbing. In a building on the edge of the plaza, he discovered what looked like a mass grave. Thousands of bodies, all from the same species. Small beings with 4 arms and large eyes. Commander, you need to see this, Pete said over the radio. Jake came running. When he saw what Pete had found, his blood went cold. What happened to them? I'm not sure, but look at this. Pete pointed to marks on the walls. Burn marks from energy weapons. I don't think they died naturally. I think they were killed. Back at the shuttle, Helen had managed to extract some data from the terminals. What she found made everything clear. I've got it, she said, her voice shaking. I know what happened here. This planet was home to a species called the Nuvari. They were peaceful, advanced, focused on art and science. 50 years ago, the Vakrine came. The Nuvari welcomed them, tried to establish trade and friendship. And the Vakrine killed them? Jake asked. Yes. According to these records, the Vakrine tested the Nuvari and found them susceptible to some kind of parasite or disease, something that the Vakrine carry but are immune to. Anyone who gets infected becomes controllable. The Vakrine use it to enslave other species. Helen pulled up images from the database. The Nuvari discovered this and refused to submit. So the Vakrine exterminated them. Every last one. Karen looked sick. And we're immune to this parasite? It seems so. The Vakrine somehow figured that out when they scanned us. That makes us either incredibly valuable as slaves who can't be controlled, or incredibly dangerous as a species who might resist them. That's why they attacked without talking to us, Lisa said. They'd already decided we were a threat. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These Vakrine, whoever they were, had murdered an entire civilization. And now they were hunting his crew for the crime of being immune to their control. We're taking everything useful we can carry, he said. Food, medicine, technology, weapons. Anything that might help us survive. And we're going to find out everything we can about the Vakrine. If we're going to be hunted, we need to know our enemy. They worked for hours, loading the shuttle with supplies and data. When they returned to the Horizon, Jake called a meeting of the entire crew. He told them what they had found. He watched their faces change from fear to anger to determination. We're a long way from home, Jake said. We're being hunted by an enemy that's stronger than us. But we're not helpless. We're going to learn. We're going to adapt. And we're going to survive long enough to find a way back to Earth, I promise you that. The crew looked at him, and in their eyes, Jake saw something change. They were no longer just explorers lost in space. They were becoming something more. Something harder. Something that wouldn't give up no matter what the universe threw at them. Somewhere in the darkness, the Vakrine ships were searching, but the Horizon was moving again, carrying its human crew deeper into unknown space, looking for allies, looking for answers, and looking for a way home. The planning room deep inside the Trell base had become Jake's world for the past week. Holographic displays showed the Nexus station from every angle. Numbers scrolled past showing shield strength, weapon positions, and patrol patterns. The more he looked at it, the more impossible the task seemed. The shields are the biggest problem, Lisa said, highlighting them on the display. They're designed to stop any attack from outside. Energy weapons bounce off. Missiles detonate before they reach the hull. Even if we had 100 ships, we couldn't break through. But inside the shields, Chris added, the station is vulnerable. The Vakreen never imagined anyone would get that close. The coordinator studied the plans with his tactical team. The question is how? Our ships are not fast enough to breach the perimeter before being destroyed. We have tried before. We lost 17 vessels and accomplished nothing. Jake walked around the hologram, studying it from different angles. What if we don't try to be fast? What if we hide? Hide inside a fleet of warships? Danny said. How? The Vakreen have been hunting us for months, Jake explained. They know how we move, how we run. What if we do exactly what they expect? We flee toward the Nexus, acting like we're desperate and cornered. They'll chase us like they always do. And when we get close to the station, we go dark and drift. Lisa's eyes lit up. Use the Vakreen's own ships as cover. If we time it right, we could slip through the shield perimeter while they're focused on corralling us. It's risky, Helen said. If they realize what we're doing even a second too early, we're dead. Everything about this plan is risky, Greg pointed out. We're talking about flying a damaged exploration ship into the most heavily defended military station in the sector and blowing it up from the inside. The coordinator made a gesture that the humans had learned meant agreement. But it is the only plan that has any chance of success. And if we do nothing, the Vakreen will eventually find this base and kill us all. At least this way we strike back. Over the next week, they refined every detail. Lisa worked with Trell engineers to modify the Horizon's reactor. They removed all the safety systems and installed a remote detonation device. When triggered, the reactor would overload in exactly 90 seconds and create an explosion equal to a small nuclear weapon. Amy studied every second of captured Vakreen communications, learning their tactical language and response patterns. She created a script of messages that would make the Horizon seem panicked and desperate, drawing the Vakreen ships closer. Karen prepared emergency medical supplies for the escape pods. Each pod would carry basic trauma kits and enough provisions for 3 days. After that, the Trell fleet would either have rescued them or they would be dead. Danny and Chris trained with the weapon systems constantly. They would need to defend the ship long enough to reach the Nexus without looking so dangerous that the Vakreen would destroy them outright. It was a delicate balance. Greg practiced the flight path again and again in simulations. He had to lead the Vakreen on a chase that looked real, avoid getting killed, position the ship perfectly near the Nexus, and then shut down all systems at exactly the right moment. One mistake and everyone died. Pete calculated and recalculated the timing. They would have 90 seconds from reactor overload to explosion. In that time, they had to evacuate the ship, launch the pods, and get clear of the blast radius. 90 seconds to save 47 lives. The night before the mission, Jake couldn't sleep. He walked through the Horizon's corridors, touching the walls, remembering the excitement they had felt when first boarding her 3 years ago. She had been humanity's hope, their reach toward the stars. Now she would be their weapon. He found Lisa in engineering making final adjustments to the reactor. Can't sleep either? He asked. She shook her head. I keep running through the sequence. If anything goes wrong, if any of these modifications fail, the explosion might not be powerful enough to destroy the Nexus. It will work, Jake said. You're the best engineer I've ever known. That's not saying much. I'm the only engineer you've ever known who can modify an alien power plant to explode on command. They both laughed, but it was hollow. Do you think we'll make it? Lisa asked quietly. Jake wanted to lie, to give her false comfort. But they had been through too much together for that. I don't know, but I know we're giving it everything we have. And I know that if we succeed, we'll have hit the Vakreen harder than anyone has in 50 years. That counts for something. It counts for a lot, Lisa agreed. The morning of the mission came too quickly. The crew gathered in the hangar bay where the Horizon sat, repaired and refueled for its final flight. Jake looked at their faces. Some were scared, some determined, some both. I'm not going to lie to you, Jake said. Today is going to be dangerous. Some of us might not make it back. But what we're about to do matters. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for the Trell, for the Nuvari who died resisting the Vakreen, for every species in this region of space who deserves to live free. He paused. When we left Earth, we were explorers looking for wonders in the universe. We found them, but not the way we expected. We found courage, friendship, and purpose. Whatever happens today, I'm proud to have served with each of you. Danny stepped forward. Commander, the crew has been talking. We want to name this operation. We're calling it First Strike. Because when Earth finally makes it out here, when our people reach the stars, they'll find that the first humans to travel the galaxy weren't victims. We were warriors. Jake felt his throat tighten. First Strike it is. Now let's get to work. Only 5 people would fly the horizon on this mission. Jake insisted on being one of them. It was his ship, his crew, his responsibility. Greg would pilot because no one else could. Chris would handle weapons and tactics. Pete would navigate. And Lisa would control the reactor detonation. The other 42 crew members would wait with the Trell fleet at a safe distance, ready to provide cover fire when the escape pods launched. As the Horizon left the Trell base, Jake took one last look at the hidden moon. If they failed, the Vakreen would eventually find this place and destroy it. If they succeeded, maybe the Trell would finally have a chance to fight back. The journey to Vakreen space took 6 hours. They flew in silence, each person lost in their own thoughts. When they crossed into enemy territory, Amy began broadcasting the panicked distress calls she had prepared. It didn't take long for the Vakreen to respond. Within minutes, sensor alarms began screaming as enemy ships converged on their position from multiple directions. "Here we go," Greg said, his hands steady on the controls. "Everyone hold on." The chase began exactly as they had planned. The Vakreen ships closed in, firing but not trying too hard to destroy them. They were hurting just as Pete had predicted weeks ago. They wanted to capture the immune humans if possible. Greg flew like his life depended on it because it did. He dodged weapons fire, threaded through asteroid fields, and pushed the engines to their limit. Behind them, more Vakreen ships joined the pursuit. "They're taking the bait," Chris said, counting 26 ships now, all focused on us. Amy broadcasted more desperate messages, begging for mercy, claiming their engines were failing. The Vakreen responded by moving closer, tightening the net. For 2 hours they flew, slowly leading the Vakreen fleet toward the Nexus. Jake watched the distance counter tick down. 500,000 kilometers, 400,000, 300,000. "We're entering the outer defense zone," Pete warned. "The station has detected us." More Vakreen ships launched from the Nexus, joining the pursuit. The chase was becoming a swarm. "Approaching the shield perimeter," Lisa called out. 2 minutes until we reach the insertion point." Greg made a wide turn that brought them into the densest part of the Vakreen formation. Ships surrounded them on all sides now, their weapons charged but not firing. They thought they had won. 1 minute, Lisa said. Jake gripped his chair. This was the moment. Everything depended on the next 60 seconds. 30 seconds, Lisa counted down. 20, 15, 10, now, Jake ordered. Greg cut all power except life support. The horizon went dark and began to drift. At the same moment, the Trell fleet that had been hiding in a nearby debris field opened fire on the Vakreen ships from behind. Chaos erupted. The Vakreen formation broke apart as ships spun to face the new threat. In the confusion, no one noticed the dark, drifting horizon as it slipped through the shield perimeter. "We're inside," Pete whispered. Greg brought the engines back online at minimum power, just enough to guide them toward the Nexus station. They were so close now that the station's weapons couldn't track them without hitting their own ships. "Locking in position," Greg said. "We're about to kiss the hull." The horizon drifted to a stop next to the Nexus, so close that Jake could see the alien metal of the station through the window. Somewhere on the other side of that wall, thousands of Vakreen worked and lived, never imagining that death had just arrived at their doorstep. "Lisa, start the sequence," Jake ordered. Lisa's hands moved across the controls, deep in engineering. The reactor began to overload. Safety systems that had protected it for years were gone, removed deliberately. The power levels climbed higher and higher. 90 seconds until detonation, Lisa announced. "Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate." 2 months of running had changed the crew of the Horizon. They moved differently now, faster and more efficient. They spoke less, wasted nothing, and slept in shifts with one eye always open. The ship itself looked different too, scarred by near misses and patched with materials salvaged from abandoned stations. Jake stood on the bridge, studying a map of the region they had been fleeing through. Red marks showed where they had encountered Vakreen ships. There were too many red marks. "They're hurting us," Pete said, pointing at the pattern. "See how the encounters are pushing us in a specific direction? They're not trying to kill us anymore. They're driving us somewhere. Into a trap, Danny added. He had been right about being careful. The galaxy was more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Lisa's voice came over the speaker from engineering. Commander, we have a problem. We're down to 15% fuel. Even if we find a gas giant to scoop from, we need time to process it. Time we don't have if the Vacrine keep pushing us. Before Jake could respond, Amy Foster looked up from her station. Over the past 2 months, she had become their translator, learning alien languages from captured broadcasts. I'm picking up a signal. It's not Vacrine. Someone is broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It's a message. What does it say? Jake asked. Amy worked for a few minutes, running the signal through her translation programs. Her eyes widened. It says, humans of the lost ship. We know you are being hunted. We can help. Follow these coordinates. You are not alone. Silence fell over the bridge. It's a trap, Danny said immediately. Has to be. Maybe, Helen said. But what if it's not? What if there are others out here who oppose the Vacrine? Pete pulled up the coordinates from the message. It's a system about 3 days from here. Multiple planets, but the signal is coming from a moon orbiting a gas giant. That's a strange place for a colony. Strange place for a trap, too, Greg pointed out. If they wanted to ambush us, they'd choose somewhere more open. Jake thought hard. They were running out of options. Fuel was low. Supplies were getting thin despite the salvage from the Nouverie world, and the Vacrine net was closing around them. Sometimes you had to take a risk. We go, he said, but carefully. Battle stations all the way. At the first sign of trouble, we run. The 3-day journey felt like 3 years. Every sensor ghost made them jump. Every strange reading sent adrenaline through their systems. But no Vacrine ships appeared. When they reached the coordinates, what they found surprised them. The moon was large, almost planet-sized, orbiting a massive blue and white gas giant. On the moon's surface, concealed in a deep canyon, were structures. Not abandoned like the Nouverie city, but active and alive with power signatures. A new message came through, this time with video. The face that appeared on screen was reptilian, covered in green and brown scales. Its eyes were large and golden. When it spoke, Amy's translation program worked instantly. Humans, I am called coordinator in your language. I lead what remains of the Trell resistance. You have survived 2 months being hunted by the Vacrine. That alone makes you worthy of respect. We offer you shelter, supplies, and information. In return, we ask only that you share your story and your technology. Jake looked at his crew. Danny was suspicious, as always. Helen looked excited. Lisa seemed cautiously hopeful. He made his decision. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earthship Horizon. We accept your offer, but we'll keep our weapons ready. Nothing personal. The Trell's face did something that might have been a smile. We would expect nothing less. We will guide you to a safe landing site. Following the Trell's directions, Greg piloted the Horizon through the canyon and into a massive underground hangar. As they landed, Jake saw dozens of other ships, none of them human, all of them looking as battered as the Horizon. The coordinator met them at the airlock with a group of other Trell. They were shorter than humans, reaching only to Jake's chest, but they moved with a grace that suggested strength. Each one wore armor and carried weapons. Welcome to our last sanctuary, the coordinator said. You are safe here. The Vacrine do not know of this place. Over the next few hours, the crew of the Horizon learned the truth about the region of space they had stumbled into. The Trell had once controlled a dozen star systems. They were scientists and explorers, much like humans. Then the Vacrine came. The coordinator took Jake, Helen, and Amy to a room filled with star maps and battle records. 50 years ago, the Vacrine Empire expanded into our space. They came with promises of trade and cooperation. But it was all lies. They carried with them a parasite, something they had engineered over centuries. It lives in their blood and spreads through contact. Helen leaned forward, fascinated and horrified. What does it do? It enters the brain and changes how a being thinks. Not obviously. The victim still seems like themselves. But they become loyal to the Vacrine. They cannot think thoughts of rebellion. They cannot imagine freedom. They become perfect slaves who don't even know they're enslaved. And you're immune? Jake asked. No. We are susceptible like most species in known space. We have survived only by avoiding contact with the Vacrine. We use remote weapons, sealed armor, and we burn our dead so the parasite cannot spread. It is a harsh way to live. Amy looked at the data on the screens. But we're immune. The Vakreen figured that out somehow. Yes, we monitored their communications about you. They were confused and frightened. In their entire history, they have never encountered a species naturally immune to their control. You represent something they cannot understand and cannot tolerate. The coordinator touched a control and a new image appeared. It showed the Vakreen homeworld and the vast empire spreading out from it. They will not stop hunting you ever. To them, you are a disease that must be eliminated before it spreads. Can you help us get home? Jake asked. Our jump drive is destroyed. We're thousands of light years from Earth. The coordinator was quiet for a moment. I will show you something, come. They followed the Trell leader deeper into the facility until they reached a laboratory. Inside, Trell scientists were studying something that made Jake's heart race. It was a piece of the Horizon's jump drive, the one they had lost during repairs weeks ago. We retrieved this from a debris field you passed through, the coordinator explained. We have been studying it. Your technology is different from anything we know. Primitive in some ways, advanced in others. You approach the problem of faster-than-light travel from a completely different direction than we did. Lisa had joined them and was staring at the component. Can you recreate it? Not with our current resources. But your approach has given us ideas. If we combine your principles with our technology, we might be able to create something new. Something better than either of us had alone. How long would that take? Jake asked. Years, the coordinator admitted. Maybe 5, maybe 10. And that's if we can gather the resources we need. The Vakreen control most of the systems with the rare materials required. Jake felt his hope sink. Years. His crew couldn't hide for years. They would run out of supplies, out of parts, out of luck. Helen asked a different question. What about a message? Could we send a signal to Earth, let them know we're alive and where we are? The coordinator considered this. Possibly. A signal could travel at light speed. It would take 8,000 years to reach your world, but yes, it could be done. Though I wonder if you should. Why not? Jake asked. Because if you tell Earth where you are, you also tell them about the Vakreen, and the Vakreen will eventually learn about Earth. Do you want to bring this war to your homeworld? Jake had no answer to that. Over the next few days, the Horizon was repaired and resupplied. The crew got to eat real meals again and sleep in actual beds. They met other members of the Trell Resistance, learned their stories, and shared their own. Danny trained with Trell warriors, learning their fighting techniques. Karen worked with Trell doctors, discovering that while their biology was different, the principles of medicine were similar. Lisa spent every waking hour in the Trell laboratories, her mind racing with possibilities. But it was Amy who made the most important discovery. She had been analyzing Vakreen communications, learning their language patterns. Late one night, she rushed to find Jake. Commander, I found something in the intercepted signals. The Vakreen are planning something big. There's a station called the Nexus. It coordinates all their military operations in this sector. They're gathering ships there, a lot of ships. I think they're preparing for a major offensive against the Trell. Jake called an emergency meeting with the coordinator and his senior crew. They gathered in the war room and studied the data Amy had collected. How long do we have? The coordinator asked. Maybe 3 weeks, Amy said. Maybe less. Then we must evacuate this base. Move to our backup locations. Or, Chris Palmer said quietly. Everyone turned to look at the tactical officer. He had been silent for most of their time with the Trell, but now he stepped forward. Or we attack them first. Attack the Nexus? Danny said. That's suicide. The data shows over 100 warships protecting it. Yes, Chris agreed. But it also shows that all those ships are there because the Vakreen are confident. They don't believe anyone would dare attack them. And the station's shields are positioned to defend against external attacks. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. Through the small window of his escape pod, Jake watched as the Horizon's reactor detonated with the force of a small star. The blast ripped through the Nexus station from the inside, tearing apart the unshielded interior structure. Secondary explosions followed as fuel reserves and weapons magazines ignited. The shockwave hit Jake's pod and sent it tumbling through space. Alarms screamed as the pod's heat shield strained against the wash of energy. Jake held on and prayed that the small craft would hold together. When his vision cleared, the Nexus was breaking apart. Huge sections of the station drifted away from each other, trailing atmosphere and debris. Emergency lights flickered across the dying structure. The command center of the entire Vakreen sector was being torn to pieces. Sound off. Jake said into his radio. Everyone check in. Greg here. Pod 2 is intact. That was one hell of a ride, the Chris reporting. Pod 3 is good. Did you see that explosion? Pete, Pod 4, all systems green. Lisa, Pod 5, we did it. We actually did it. Jake felt relief wash over him. They had all made it. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Trell Fleet, this is Commander Morrison, requesting pickup. 5 pods, all crew accounted for. The coordinator's voice came back immediately. We see you, Commander. We are moving to recover you now, and we see what you have done. The entire sector sees what you have done. As the Trell ships approached, Jake watched the Vakreen fleet descend into chaos. Without the nexus to coordinate their movements, the warships were confused and disorganized. Some were trying to rescue survivors from the station. Others were firing at the Trell fleet. A few were even shooting at each other in the confusion. The Trell had been waiting for this moment. Their ships, outnumbered but now facing a disorganized enemy, struck hard and fast. They targeted the Vakreen command vessels, cutting off what little coordination remained. Jake's pod was pulled into the cargo bay of a Trell carrier. The moment the airlock sealed and atmosphere flooded back in, he opened the hatch and climbed out. Greg, Chris, Pete, and Lisa were already there, being checked by Trell medics. They looked at each other, barely able to believe they were alive. Then Lisa started laughing, and suddenly they were all laughing, the hysterical release of people who had walked through death and come out the other side. The coordinator found them a few minutes later. The Trell leader approached Jake and performed a gesture that they had learned was a sign of deep respect. What you have done today will be remembered for generations, the coordinator said. The Vakreen have ruled this sector through fear for 50 years. Today you have shown that they can bleed, that they can be hurt, that they are not invincible. We couldn't have done it without your people, Jake said. Your intelligence, your supplies, your support. We were in this together. Yes, the coordinator agreed. Together. That is a new word for us. For too long, each species in this region has fought alone or surrendered. But you humans, you showed us another way. Over the next few hours, Jake was reunited with the rest of his crew. They had watched the explosion from the Trell fleet and seen the Horizon's final moment. There were tears and hugs and a profound sense of loss mixed with victory. Karen checked everyone for injuries. Remarkably, they had only minor wounds. Bruises, cuts, nothing serious. It was a miracle. That night, the Trell held a gathering in honor of the Horizon and her crew. Representatives from a dozen different species that had been hiding from the Vakreen came to meet the humans who had struck the impossible blow. Jake stood before them and felt the weight of what they had started. We didn't come here to be heroes, he said as Amy translated his words. We came here by accident, lost and scared. But you gave us shelter. You gave us hope. And you showed us that there are good people in this galaxy worth fighting for. He looked at his crew. The Horizon is gone, but we're still here. And as long as we're here, we're going to keep fighting, not because we're warriors by nature, but because sometimes peaceful people have to stand up to those who would take freedom away from others. The coordinator stepped forward. The Vakreen will not forget what happened today. They will hunt you with even more determination. They will hunt all of us. But now we have something we didn't have before. We have proof that resistance is possible. We have hope. In the days that followed, the full impact of the Nexus destruction became clear. The Vakreen had lost not just a station, but their entire command structure for the sector. Fleet movements were uncoordinated. Supply lines were disrupted. Colonies that had been held through intimidation began to rebel. Other species that had been quietly resisting the Vakreen came out of hiding. They had weapons, ships, and a burning desire to fight back. The Trell resistance, once a small, desperate group, became the core of something larger. An alliance, rebellion. Lisa spent her time working with Trell scientists on the jump drive problem. The destruction of the Horizon had destroyed their best chance at quick reproduction of the technology, but the knowledge remained. They worked on new designs combining human and Trell principles. It's going to take years, Lisa told Jake one evening. Maybe 5, maybe 10, but I really think we can do it. We can build a drive that could get a ship back to Earth? A ship, Jake said. Not necessarily us. Maybe not us, Lisa admitted. But we can send a message. We can let Earth know what's out here. We can warn them about the Vakreen and tell them about the alliance we're building. Jake thought about that. Earth was 8,000 light years away. By the time any message reached home, he would be long dead. His crew would be old or gone, but their children or their children's children might live to see humans return to this region of space. "Do it," he said. "Build the drive. Send the message. Tell Earth what happened to us. Tell them about the friends we made and the enemies we faced. Tell them not to come alone." Helen made a different discovery. In the wreckage of the Nexus, the Trell had recovered data archives. Helen spent weeks translating them with Amy's help. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The Vakreen Empire was vast, spanning hundreds of systems, but it was also fragile. It relied on the parasite to control subject populations and on overwhelming force to crush resistance before it could organize. The destruction of the Nexus had proven that force could be defeated. More importantly, they found references to other immune species. Humanity wasn't alone in their resistance to the Vakreen parasite. There were others scattered across the galaxy, most of them hiding or extinct, but some were still out there. "We need to find them," Helen said. "If we can unite all the immune species with the Trell and the other rebels, we might have a real chance." It became their new mission. The crew of the Horizon, now scattered across Trell ships, became ambassadors and warriors. They traveled to hidden colonies and rebel bases, sharing their story and building the alliance. Danny trained resistance fighters in combat tactics. Karen taught medicine to species who had never had access to proper healthcare. Pete used his navigation skills to map safe routes through Vakreen space. Amy became a voice for the rebellion, her broadcasts spreading hope across dozens of worlds. Jake found himself becoming something he never expected to be, a leader of a resistance movement. The Trell wanted him to coordinate human involvement in the alliance. Other species looked to him as a symbol of what could be accomplished against impossible odds. 1 year after the destruction of the Nexus, Jake stood on the bridge of a Trell warship and looked at a strategic map. The Vakreen still controlled most of the sector, but their grip was weakening. The Alliance controlled 12 systems now, freed from Vakreen rule. More were in open rebellion. Greg approached him with news. "Commander, the scouts just reported back. They found another immune species hiding in the outer rim, miners who have been avoiding the Vakreen for decades. They want to join us." "How many ships do they have?" Jake asked. 20 warships, small but heavily armed. Jake marked their location on the map. Every ship counted. Every ally mattered. Lisa found him later that evening. "I wanted to show you something," she said, leading him to the engineering bay. There, taking shape in the construction frame, was a new jump drive. It was larger than the Horizons had been, built with both human and Trell technology. It gleamed under the work lights. "It's not ready yet," Lisa said, "but in another year, maybe 2, we'll be able to test it. And if it works, we can send a probe back to Earth, a message that tells them everything." "What will you tell them?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled. "The truth. That we're lost but not forgotten, that we found enemies and friends among the stars, that we're building something out here, something worth protecting, and that someday when Earth is ready, they should come find us. Not to rescue us, but to join us." Jake looked at the drive, then at Lisa, then out at the stars visible through the bay window. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting, unaware of the adventures its children were having among the stars. They had left home as explorers and become warriors. They had lost their ship but found a purpose. They were still thousands of light years from Earth, still hunted by the Vakreen, but they were no longer running. They were fighting back. The crew of the Horizon had shown the galaxy something it hadn't seen in generations. They had shown that humans, despite being new to the stars, the bridge of the Horizon was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers. Commander Jake Morrison stood near the main window, looking out at the stars. Behind him, 47 crew members worked at their stations, preparing for something no human had ever done before. They were about to jump across space faster than light. Lisa Barrett sat in the engineering section, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. She had spent 5 years building the jump drive with her team. Every calculation had been checked 100 times. Every part had been tested again and again. But her hands still shook a little as she activated the final sequence. Pete Sullivan called out from his station. "Course is locked in, Commander. 3.2 light years to the Alpha Centauri system. We'll arrive in approximately 10 seconds once we jump." Jake nodded. He pressed the button on his chair that connected him to every speaker on the ship. "All crew, this is Morrison. We're about to make history. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you to know it's been an honor, serving with each of you. Prepare for jump in 60 seconds, he looked around the bridge. These people had become his family over the past 3 years of preparation and training. There was Helen Cruz, the scientist who dreamed of meeting aliens. Danny Wright, the security officer who kept everyone safe. Karen Hughes, the doctor who could fix almost any injury. Greg Hayes, the pilot who could fly anything with engines. 30 seconds, Lisa called out. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly as the jump drive pulled power from every system on the ship. Jake felt his heart beating faster. They were really doing this. Humanity was about to reach out and touch another star. 10 seconds. 9, 8. The crew counted down together. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lisa pressed the final button. The universe twisted. Jake felt like he was being pulled apart and crushed together at the same time. Colors that didn't exist flashed before his eyes. The stars outside the window stretched into long lines of light. Then everything went white. When his vision cleared, Jake knew immediately that something was wrong. The stars outside looked different. Very different. These weren't the familiar constellations he had memorized since childhood. The view screen showed no sign of Alpha Centauri's distinctive triple star system. "Report," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Pete was already working frantically at his station. His face had gone pale. "Commander, we're not where we're supposed to be. I'm trying to match the star patterns to our database, but nothing matches. Nothing at all." Lisa's voice came over the speaker, tight with fear. "The jump drive is completely burned out. Every component is fused. It's going to take months to repair, maybe years, and that's if we have the right materials." "How far did we jump?" Jake asked. Pete didn't answer at first. He ran the calculations again, then again. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, based on the star positions and galactic core readings, we're approximately 8,000 light-years from Earth. I don't know how, but we jumped across a quarter of the galaxy." Silence fell over the bridge. 8,000 light-years. Even at light speed, it would take 8,000 years to get home. With their conventional engines, it would take hundreds of thousands of years. Helen broke the silence. "We need to figure out where we are and if there are any inhabited systems nearby. Maybe someone out here can help us." Danny stood up from his station. "Or maybe someone out here is dangerous. We need to be careful." Jake made a decision. "Pete, scan for nearby star systems." Helen analyzed the local space for any signs of technology or life. "Danny, put the ship on alert status, but keep weapons powered down. We don't want to seem threatening." The crew worked in silence for the next hour. Slowly, they began to understand their situation. They were in a region of space dense with stars and planets. Several nearby systems showed signs of advanced technology. Radio signals crossed the darkness between worlds. Someone was out here, and they were definitely not alone. "Commander, I'm picking up something," Greg said suddenly. "Multiple objects approaching our position. Fast. Very fast." "On screen," Jake ordered. The view screen changed to show what the sensors had detected. 6 ships, each one twice the size of the horizon, were racing toward them. Their design was unlike anything humans had ever built. Sharp angles, dark metal, weapons ports that glowed with orange light. "Are they hailing us?" Jake asked. Pete shook his head. "No signals at all, Commander. They're just coming straight for us." Helen leaned forward, excited despite the danger. "This is first contact. We need to try to communicate with them. They might be curious about us." Jake wasn't so sure, but he had to try. "Open all communication channels. Broadcast on every frequency we have. Tell them we're explorers from Earth, that we come in peace, that we need help." Pete sent the message in every format they could think of. Mathematical sequences, pictures, radio waves, even light pulses. The alien ships didn't slow down. "Commander, they're powering weapons," Danny said, his voice urgent. "I'm reading massive energy buildups on all 6 vessels. Raise shields. All power to defensive systems," Jake ordered. His mind raced. Why would they attack without even trying to talk? The first blast hit the horizon's shields like a hammer. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. The lights flickered. "Shields at 60%, Danny called out. "We can't take many more hits like that." "Return fire," Jake said. He hated giving the order, but they had no choice. The Horizon's weapons, designed for clearing space debris and defending against micrometeorites, fired back. The shots barely scratched the alien ships. "They're too strong," Greg said. "We need to run." Another blast rocked the ship. Crew members grabbed their stations to keep from falling. Somewhere below, Jake heard the sound of something breaking. "Lisa, I need engines at maximum power right now," Jake said into the comm system. "You'll get them," Lisa replied. "But Commander, we can't fight these things. Our weapons weren't designed for war." "I know," Jake said. "Greg, get us out of here. Maximum speed, any direction that's away from them." Greg's hands flew across the controls. The horizon spun and accelerated, its engines burning brighter than they ever had before. The alien ships followed, firing as they came. The chase was on. Jake watched the distance between them and the aliens slowly increase. The horizon was fast, but not fast enough. The aliens were gaining slowly but surely. "We need to lose them," he said. "Ideas, people, anything." Helen studied the sensor readings. "There's an asteroid field 2 million kilometers ahead. If we can get in there, maybe we can hide." "Do it," Jake ordered. Greg pushed the ship harder, racing toward the field of tumbling rocks. Behind them, the alien ships kept firing. Each blast that hit sent shudders through the horizon's hull. They reached the asteroid field and plunged in. Greg dodged between massive rocks, using every bit of his skill. The aliens followed but had to slow down. The horizon pulled ahead. "Find us a place to hide," Jake said. "Somewhere these things can't see us." Pete scanned desperately. "There, a large asteroid with a crater on the dark side. If we power down and drift, we might disappear on their sensors." They had no better option. Greg guided the ship into the crater and shut down everything except life support. The horizon went dark and quiet. Outside, the alien ships searched the field, their weapons ready. The crew of the Horizon held their breath and waited. Thousands of light years from home, hunted by enemies they had never met, with no way to call for help and no way to go back. Jake looked at his crew's frightened faces and knew that everything had changed. They were no longer explorers on a historic mission. They were survivors trying to stay alive in a hostile galaxy, and their journey had only just begun.